Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If I may have your attention, please. Welcome to Capitol Hill Ocean Week. My name is Jason Patlis. I'm the president and CEO of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. Now, we are once again proud to host Capitol Hill Ocean Week, or CHOW as we affectionately refer to it, here at the museum. Wonderful space. This is our second year here. And we are very excited not only by the breadth of topics that you will hear throughout the week, but also the panelists and speakers who will be talking on those topics. We have a deeper roster than I think we have ever had, I dare say, and it's been the wonderful work of the team to put it together. This is the 13th year that we will be hosting CHOW, and it continues to grow in size and scope. For the last 3 years, we have had more than 650 registrants and several thousand viewing online. So welcome to our folks watching on Oceans Live, and welcome again to everybody here in the room. 13 years ago, when we started CHOW, that was it. There was really very little else going on in terms of driving an ocean conversation. And what is really exhilarating now is that as much as CHOW has grown, CHOW now sits atop a very crowded calendar that it keeps us busy all year long. We've got the World Ocean Summit that was held. We've got the Blue Vision Summit. There are film festivals, and there are seafood summits that take place throughout the country all year. And next week, of course, is Our Ocean Conference hosted by Secretary of State John Kerry. All this is really excellent news for the ocean, because everybody in this room knows better than anyone else it's increased awareness that is the first step to increased action. And we have seen increased action in the last 13 years across the board, from local communities to our national leadership. Beginning in 1998, the year of the ocean, when we saw the National Oceans Conference in Monterey, hosted by President Clinton at the time, every president since then has made his mark on ocean stewardship. 2 years ago, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation was honored to recognize President Clinton with its Leadership Award at the Ocean Awards Gala, which will be this evening for this year. And President Clinton sparked an unprecedented wave, and I mean that literally and figuratively, of presidential policies on behalf of our ocean ever since. The driving force behind the National Oceans Conference, and so much that has followed across the country since then, is the opening keynote speaker for CHOW 2014. Mr. John Podesta currently serves as counsel to the President, and in that capacity he oversees climate change and energy policy and environmental issues on behalf of President Obama, which, as you all know, particularly in climate change, has seen some very exciting announcements in the last couple of weeks. And it's a credit to Mr. Podesta and the administration for tackling really the defining challenge of our era. Mr. Podesta previously served in the White House as Chief of Staff to President Clinton from the years 1998 to 2001, and during the intervening years, he founded and led the Center for American Progress. He served as a member of both the Joint Ocean Commission Initiative and the Global Ocean Commission, and in many different capacities, Mr. Podesta has championed sound, responsible ocean governance. And we're delighted and honored to have Mr. Podesta with us this morning to kick off CHOW 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Podesta.
Well, thank you, everybody. It is great to be here, and I was really looking forward to this event to kick off Capitol Hill Ocean Week. It gave me a chance to wear my Save the Shark tie, and most importantly, I rarely get the chance to show off my shark bite. So I appreciate being here with you today. And sorry for fumbling around a little bit here, but I want to begin by thanking Jason, the president of the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, and his dedicated staff for once again pulling together a truly outstanding roster of speakers for CHOW 2014. This has become an important annual event, and while the calendar's gotten a little more crowded, this is always one of the highlights of the year for the ocean community. In 1962, President Kennedy said at the beginning of the America's Cup race, "I really don't know why it is that all of us are so committed to the sea, except I think it's because we all came from the sea. We are tied to the ocean, and when we go back to the sea, we are going back to whence we came. The United States, of course, is an ocean nation. From the Gulf of Maine to Bristol Bay, from the Port of Long Beach to the Florida Keys. The ocean is an engine of economic activity, a place of recreation and reflection, and a conduit to the rest of the world. The United States is an ocean nation, and our oceans are in trouble. Climate change is causing the seas to rise and grow warmer. The ocean absorbs about a quarter of man-made carbon dioxide emissions, which is leading to dramatic ocean acidification. Already, the oceans are about 30% more acidic than they were before industrialization. Changing ocean temperatures force certain species to migrate, fundamentally shifting ocean and coastal ecosystems. That's why I think we have to double down on our efforts to protect the oceans and to better balance the management of the economic, environmental, energy, and security resources of our ocean people that our oceans provide. Standing here today, 5.5 years into President Obama's administration, I'm reminded, and Jason reminded us, of the Oceans Conference in 1998 in Monterey, California, which was 5.5 years into President Clinton's administration. At that conference, he laid out the principles that would guide ocean policy for the remainder of his term: building sustainable fisheries, advancing ocean monitoring systems, and crafting recommendations to create a coordinated long-term federal ocean policy. At the Monterey conference, and I see my friend Norm Mineta here. I want to recognize him for all the tremendous work that he did during that time, and then taking over the Department of Commerce and really leading the effort. His award tonight is well deserved. So I want to give him a shout out. But at that Monterey conference, President Clinton observed that the oceans are so vast and so powerful that people assume their actions can't possibly have an impact. The oceans, after all, cover 71% of the globe. It contains fully 90% of the water on Earth. It's so vast and in places so wild that the majority of the undersea world remains unexplored. How many times have you said in your life that something you did is a mere drop in the ocean, President Clinton asks? Well, something you do may be a mere drop in the ocean, but millions, even billions of those drops in the ocean can have a profound effect. The Monterey Conference, I think, helped spur a tremendous amount of research into how we could more responsibly manage our oceans, from the Oceans Act of 2000 to the two ocean commissions to the Joint Ocean Commission Initiative. Ocean policy efforts launched in the last few decades have vastly improved our understanding of the challenges facing the global ocean. Fully understanding the magnitude of those challenges, President Bush, early in his term, following up on the initiatives that President Bush took at the end of his term, President Obama launched the National Ocean Policy, which seeks to create a coordinated, science-based, proactive approach to managing and aligning the many resources and uses of our coasts and our oceans. Jane Lubchenco sitting in the front row, she had, along with John Holdren and CEQ, had a tremendous amount to do in pulling that document together, which still guides the administration's efforts. The National Ocean Policy seeks to harmonize more than 100 laws that govern our oceans. National ocean policy initiatives range from supporting sustainable seafood aquaculture to releasing more federal data to support permitting of offshore renewable energy projects, to making ports more resilient to sea level rise and other looming challenges posed by climate change. I'm here today to say the National Ocean Policy is already paying positive dividends in communities up and down the coasts. The President and the entire administration are committed to continuing work with local leaders to make our oceans and our ocean communities more sustainable and more resilient. In Massachusetts, for instance, local leaders took stock of the many ways their offshore areas were used, from shipping and whale watching for military exercises and recreation. By mapping these uses against each other, the state was able to identify the optimal location for a new undersea telecommunications cable without delay, without cost, and without conflict. That's exactly the kind of benefit that coordinated marine planning can bring to communities around the country. And that's what the voluntary regional planning bodies working under the National Ocean Policy are working toward on a bigger scale, finding common sense ways for the wide range of people and organizations who live and work and play in the ocean to enjoy the full benefit of ocean resources. And the White House is committed to helping these outstanding federal, tribal, state, and local leaders build management plans to work best for their states. Just last week, we brought on board a new director for the National Ocean Council. Beth Kurtula was the minority leader of the Alaska House of Representatives and a fellow at the Center for Ocean Solutions. She has extensive experience working with local communities and industry to improve coastal management and will be a force of nature in pushing forward the implementation of the National Ocean Policy. I've seen many friends here from Alaska already this morning, and I hope that you've had the occasion to meet Beth and will be able to work with her as she continues implementation of the National Ocean Policy. Reconciling the many uses we have for our oceans on a regional level is hard work. It requires both concerted efforts to coordinate stakeholders across a wide range of industries, as well as minute attention to detail. That's why I'm proud to announce today that we expect 2 regional marine planning bodies, the Northeast and the Mid-Atlantic regions, to have their regional marine plans out the door by the end of President Obama's time in office. From Maine to Virginia, regional plans will be in place to balance commercial fishing and energy development, shipping and military exercises, infrastructure and environmental protection. Fishing communities will be less vulnerable to economic shocks because of stock collapses. Coastal communities will be made more resilient to the threats posed by climate change. Permitting for new projects will be able to proceed smoothly with all of the relevant uses of the ocean taken into account up front and properly. And federal agencies will have a clearer understanding of local communities' priorities for their ocean areas and will be able to take those priorities into account in making their decisions. These plans will be a game changer, in my view, in the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic coastlines, and they'll provide valuable lessons to other regions of the country. And the regional planning bodies, as well as the National Ocean Council, are committed to getting these plans finalized and, as I said, out the door by the end of the administration. 39% of the U.S. population lives in counties that are directly on the coast, and over 1/3 of GDP is generated in coastal areas. That's why the Obama administration is committed to supporting and encouraging the growth of the ocean economy. The National Ocean Policy is a key part of that effort. In the Gulf of Mexico, 6 federal agencies are working with their state counterparts, the oil and gas industry, commercial and recreation fishers, and the public to turn decommissioned oil rigs into artificial coral reefs. This Rigs to Reefs program helped create robust, diverse marine habitats and can help support rebuilding fish stocks in the Gulf. In Washington state, the National Shellfish Initiative recently contributed to the opening of a new hatchery for native shellfish. The new hatchery will preserve local populations for conservation and aquaculture purposes and help the Northwest shellfish industry thrive. I don't know if most of you saw it, but at the recent National Climate Assessment that we released in March, that assessment made clear ocean acidification is already posing a serious danger to shellfish farming in the Pacific Northwest. In Oregon, shellfish growers realized that more acidic seawater reduced growth in juvenile Pacific oysters. In Washington state, water quality issues have killed off oyster larvae before they can begin growing shells. The region is taking steps to mitigate the negative effects that climate change is already having on this vital industry, bolstering domestic aquaculture and making sure that shellfish farming is capable of withstanding the impacts of climate change is important for our national economy and for our global fish stocks. Most seafood consumed in the United States, of course, is imported, resulting in a seafood trade deficit of between $8 and $10 billion. That's why the National Ocean Policy calls for supporting more domestic aquaculture and why these initiatives are so crucial. And that's why I'm pleased to announce that federal agencies are completing work on a new roadmap to streamline the permitting process for shellfish aquaculture. The new roadmap will help shellfish farmers understand how to secure the permits they need and will help federal agencies identify ways to improve the efficiency of the permitting process. Farming more shellfish in the United States will be an economic boon to local communities, creating jobs and investment on our shores, and it will help rebalance our seafood trade as more seafood will be produced here for U.S. consumption. Expanding aquaculture could also help the U.S. take on the problem of so-called IUU fishing, fishing that is illegal, unreported, and unregulated. Not sure who came up with that term, but I like to refer to it as black market fishing. Black market fishing activity is a major threat to the sustainability of the world fisheries, a drain on the global economy, and a serious global security threat. Black market fishing constitutes up to 20% of wild marine fish caught each year around the world and drains up to $23 billion from legitimate fishing enterprises. Operating outside the law, these pirate fishing vessels take in fish without regard to the sustainability of ocean ecosystems. Not required to file trip plans or carry transponders, the ships become vectors for criminals who traffic in drugs, guns, and human beings. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing will be a major focus of Secretary Kerry's Our Ocean conference next week at the State Department. So I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but you could expect more action as we make announcements next week about what the U.S. can do to suppress IUU fishing. I do want to take a moment to recognize and thank the Senate for recently ratifying the UN Port State Securities Agreement, which requires stricter controls on foreign fishing vessels when they're in port. And in particular, I want to thank Senators Rockefeller and Begich for carrying on the legacy of the late Senator Inouye. Senator Inouye originally developed the legislation to implement the Port State Measures Agreement and to strengthen the U.S.'s ability to combat black market fishing. The United States, I think, is well positioned to lead the global push to eliminate black market fishing and promote sustainable fishing practices. In recent years, the government has worked to implement the reforms included in the 2007 reauthorization of the Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act. Because of these MSA reforms, we have largely ended overfishing in federally managed waters, and we're rebuilding fish stocks at unprecedented rates in much of our country. The 2007 reforms include a mandate to rely on scientific analysis to establish realistic catch limits, as well as significant management flexibility. I want to emphasize what a tremendous accomplishment that is, in no small part because establishing data on fish stocks is pretty tricky. Counting the number of fish in a fishery is a lot like trying to take a census of all the trees in the Amazon if the trees were moving around at will and sometimes they ate each other. The Magnuson-Stevens Act shows that what sound science can do for ocean management. Since 2000, 34 fish stocks have been rebuilt and other stocks have steadily moved off the overfishing list. One recent success story is the black sea bass, a species native to the South Atlantic Ocean. It's a popular fish with a range from Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, all the way to the Florida Keys. It was declared overfished in 2006. Creating management plans is always challenging, but by implementing strong measures, including fish size limits and a constant catch plan, the black sea bass stock recovered ahead of schedule. As a result of the rebuilding, annual catch limits have more than doubled, which is good news for both recreational and commercial fishers and for economies across the South Atlantic states. Responsible fishery management, grounded in strong science and reinforced by strong partnerships between the fishing, conservation, and science communities, is crucial for the economic health of fishing communities and the country as a whole. In 2011, the seafood industry generated $129 billion in sales, $37 billion in income, and supported 1.2 million jobs. In the same year, the recreational fishing industry generated $70 billion in sales, and supported nearly 500,000 jobs. To be sure, we didn't get here overnight, and we still have a lot of work ahead of us. Some fisheries, notably certain New England cod stocks, have been excessively fished, probably for more than a century. The impacts of climate change may make it more difficult to rebuild certain stocks, but MSA success shows that rebuilding plans based on sound science can ensure that sustainable fisheries are maintained for future generations while maintaining that strong fishing economy that I just mentioned, so that it's good for local citizens, it's good for the economy, and it's good for the sustainability of those stocks. Magnuson-Stevens, of course, is up for reauthorization, and Congress should promptly pass strong legislation that maintains the successful science-based conservation measures that are currently in place. We've known that overfishing threatens our oceans for decades, but today we're facing a novel threat from climate change, and we urgently need to learn more about what those threats may mean for our ocean ecosystems. The observed rate of change in the acidity of our ocean is 50 times faster than any known historical change. 50 times faster. The pH level of the ocean has not changed this dramatically or this quickly for the past 100 million years. That is a really long time. And that's what we're experiencing decade after decade now. So we urgently need to, A, do something about climate change, and as the administration is attempting to do and was mentioned by Jason. But we also need to learn more about what these rapid changes mean for marine life. Increasing acidity appears to be particularly harmful for tropical corals and for species that build carbonate shells to live in. That group extends well beyond the shellfish that we think about or that are available at our fish counters or that we might order in a restaurant. They include smaller species near the bottom of the food chain that salmon and other fish depend on for food. Better understanding ocean acidification will be critical as we work to make our coastal communities more resilient to the environmental, economic, and physical impacts of climate change. Even today, relatively little is known about what ocean acidification will mean for marine ecosystems and broader systems. We must make investments current and in the future in observational capacity and technology to monitor ocean acidification in crucial ecosystems and begin to seek responses. These are critical investments. They're security investments for our country. One of the best solutions I think we have to the challenges of overfishing and environmental degradation is establishing marine protected areas, monuments, and sanctuaries. Just as land-based conservation measures produce both environmental and economic benefits, protecting pristine landscapes for future generations, promoting travel and tourism and recreation for local economies, marine conservation is an incredibly valuable tool for preserving ocean ecosystems. Marine preservation also has the benefit of helping build resilience against the impacts of climate change. For instance, there is some evidence that reducing local stresses on corals can improve their ability to resist larger climate-related impacts like rising ocean temperatures and acidification that I mentioned. Healthy reefs, in turn, play an important role in protecting coastlines from severe storm surges, which can have a devastating effect on infrastructure along the coast. And marine conservation helps preserve biodiversity. There is still so much we don't know about sea life, about the ocean floor, about the many thousands of plants and fish and crustaceans and mollusks and corals and other species that call our oceans home. Marine conservation keeps scientifically valuable ecosystems in place for future study and discovery and for future enjoyment of the next generation of Americans. Of course, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation knows all about that. Every day, this organization works to preserve, protect, and promote meaningful opportunities for public interaction with the 14 existing marine sanctuaries. So I'm especially glad to make one last policy announcement here. Today, NOAA will release a final rule reopening the public nomination process for proposing new sanctuaries in our oceans and the Great Lakes. For the first time since 1995, the American people will be able to nominate nationally significant marine and Great Lakes areas as new marine sanctuaries. This reflects the overwhelming consensus of more than 18,000 comments received on the proposed version of the rule. By opening the marine sanctuary nomination process back up to the public, NOAA will be able to more easily take stock of local support for particular marine sanctuaries. President Obama has pledged to make 2014 a year of action and to use the power of the pen and the phone to secure progress and opportunity for the American people. The administration is committed to using the remainder of the president's term to advance marine conservation through a variety of measures. While today's final rule does not automatically create any new marine sanctuaries, it does begin a new chapter of public consultation, input, and investment in marine conservation. The United States is an ocean nation, and our oceans are facing considerable challenges, as I noted. Preserving biodiversity, rebuilding fish stocks, addressing pollution and acidification, and rising temperatures. None of these things are easy, you all know that, but all of them are crucially important to our environment, to our economy, and to our identity as Americans. We must do everything in our power to be the best possible stewards we can, to be the stewards of resources and opportunities of our vast and spectacular oceans. We have to do that in partnership. We can do it as partners. I look around the room and see so many people who can partner in their local communities and with the federal government. I'm confident that we can continue to make tremendous progress. So thanks for organizing this, the CHOW conference once again. It's really an important opportunity for us all to get together and to discuss the strategies we need to put on the table to implement to make sure that we protect our oceans and keep them as valuable places for future generations. Thank you. Take a couple questions?
Yeah, why don't you have a seat?
Great.
So thank you, John. That was wonderful. It's very exhilarating, very gratifying, and I dare say very inspiring to hear all of the initiatives that are being undertaken, many of which we know, some of which we may not have known, one of which is certainly very new and for which we've been waiting 20 years to hear. And for those of us working on national marine sanctuaries, particularly at the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, it's near and dear to our hearts and really a wonderful announcement. We have time for just a couple of questions that I, as host, will exercise my prerogative to ask, and then we'll move on. So I will start up, and then to the extent John's got time and interest, we'll take some questions from the audience. So everybody here at Capitol Ocean Week and watching on Oceans Live knows these issues. We know the problems, we know the challenges, and we know what's needed. As John said, 39% of Americans live on the coast, but the number of folks in the country who actually care about these issues, who understand these issues outside of the room, is a far smaller percent of Americans. One of the big challenges is how we expand the knowledge base.
Well, look, I think conferences like this help do that. And I think the Secretaries Conference next week, the Our Oceans Conference, will hopefully get some national attention. The most important thing, I think, is for communities who live and thrive and make their livings on the ocean, who understand their beauty, understand their value, both from recreation as well as a commercial value across a range of different assets, really come together and begin to build public support into a campaign. You know, I think about the challenge For example, I spend lots of hours of the day working on the challenge of climate change, where people, they get that climate change is happening. They get that it's going to really be a very serious problem for future generations. And yet the saliency of the issue needs to be raised by public education. That's what the National Climate Assessment, I think, helped do. And I think the same kind of thing is true for ocean policy, and for both the value of the ocean, the wonder of the oceans, the ability for people. I think there's no one who's ever been to an ocean beach who doesn't come away with a memory of that experience, not just of the sight and the smell, but the sound and the connection that we have as people, as President Kennedy said, 40 years ago. And the connection we have as the American people. But I think it takes organization. It takes public communications. It takes the community, I think, coming together, not viewing themselves as individual efforts, particularly in the NGO community, but to try to coordinate an overall campaign. Hopefully, this year will be an important element of that as the State Department dives into our role as a steward of global oceans. Next year, the United States will chair the Arctic Council, which place a bright light on the fact that of the U.S. stake in the Arctic and the need for strong Arctic policy and the need to coordinate policy across Arctic nations to ensure the integrity of the ecosystem there, to have more and clearer sense of and awareness of the environment in the Arctic. So I think those are building opportunities, and hopefully we'll kick it off this week with CHOW, next week with our Oceans Conference at the State Department, which President Obama will address by video, and I'll have a few things to say, a few announcements to make. And I think we just need to continuously build public support. But that is essentially a job of organization, and I know you're good organizers, so I expect you to get out there and do it. And now I think actually with this new announcement, we'll have an opportunity to galvanize people to protect their own local places, because in some ways that's the way people experience this. Not so much in the grandeur of the vast oceans, but in the particular communities they live in. So that's a tremendous organizing opportunity to bid in the specific places to greater protection and to organize people in support of that.
Thank you. Yes, that is certainly our hope with respect to the proposed rule, now final, in that it really turns policymaking on its head and puts it in a very democratic and very grassroots and bottom-up way to come to the federal government for decision making.
I grew up in Chicago and used to spend my misbegotten youth on the banks of Lake Michigan. So I'm glad the Great Lakes are included in this initiative. And again, I think that people they relate to those. It's easier to talk about the beach you went to sometimes than the vastness of the ocean. So this, I really do think, is a giant step forward and a great organizing opportunity for the oceans community.
I'd like to ask you to address what I see as the other major challenge facing us on ocean stewardship. Lack of awareness is one, but the other big enemy that we have is the clock, and the fact that time is short when we look at what's going on across the ocean and across the global environment. And in today's political climate, moving major policy is more challenging than ever. How do we address the timing question?
Well, I think that's particularly true given the, let me put this delicately, lack of productivity of the current Congress. I mentioned Magnuson Stevens is up for reauthorization. The ability of Congress to address the challenges of climate change is pretty much stalled. But I think we have tools and levers that we all have to use, both at the local at state level, but particularly at the national level. So that's why I think the president has moved so robustly and strongly forward with creating the Climate Action Plan. That's why we took the actions we took last week to begin to regulate CO2 emissions from coal-fired power plants. Probably the most important threat to the oceans today is greenhouse gas pollution, particularly CO2 pollution, that's affecting acidification of the oceans. So that's a global challenge. It means that we need to be successful in dealing with the challenge of climate change and carbon pollution here at home. But it also means that we have to work with our partners across the globe to both reduce emissions, but also better understand what's happening in the vast unexplored oceans. And that's why I made the pitch for greater investment. That goes back, again, a couple of decades to the need to really understand the process of what's happening in the oceans as a result of the absorption of so much CO2. One of the things that came out of the National Climate Assessment, which is at the beginning of deeper understanding, is that not only are the oceans absorbing more CO2, they're warming, and that the warming layer on top of the oceans is extending deeper and deeper into the deep ocean, which has a contributing effect to the way hurricanes intensify, because the natural cycle of bringing up cold water, as John Holdren made the point when he released the National Climate Assessment, there's an inhibiting effect on the strength of hurricanes from dragging up cold water, which tends to break up the intensity. Well, that deep heat is getting deeper and deeper into the ocean. So the inhibiting effect that the oceans naturally play on what's happening in hurricanes is beginning to weaken. And we don't understand that completely. We need to do more research. We need to understand the way acidification is affecting the whole ocean, the way the heat is affecting the whole ocean. And it's really, I think, vital for the United States to investigate in its science platform to make sure that our researchers and the academic community, as well as in the federal family, have information available so that people can plan for the future and build more resilience into the way we're dealing with coastlines. The administration also recently initiated as part of its big data drive a site called climate.data.gov, and the first 100 data sets there went to giving communities the ability to map what's happening on sea level rise. So it's another place where I think more public understanding leads to better planning, leads to better outcomes, and more resilience in our communities.
Thank you. I know our time is short. I know Mr. Podesta's time is short. I will take one question from the audience. Before I do, though, I want to recognize not only Dr. Lubchenco and Mr. Mineta, who have driven ocean policy for a lot of years in the past, but we have another special, I should say, set of guests in the room. Given everything that Mr. Podesta mentioned with respect to Alaska and the Arctic, it's my great pleasure to welcome the Pribilof Island Student Marine Science Team. I think they have come the furthest for this week's conference. I'd like to recognize them.
Yeah.
As you could see, not only do they represent the Pribilofs, which is really on the front line of all of the changes and impacts that we see going on, but they, as students, represent the next generation who will lead us to the solutions that are necessary. And I think we have a presentation here.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
My name is Danny. I'm from the Pribilof Islands. Thank you for the great news. Here's the Pribilof Island Sanctuary program.
Great.
And We would love it if you came and visit us again.
I think the weather has to be better there at this time of year.
It's been pretty warm lately.
I would love to come and visit, and thank you for what you're doing, and thank you to all the young people particularly for digging into not only the organizing for change and for protection, but for really focusing on science and being willing to invest your careers and making sure you understand what's happening in your home community and what's happening in the Arctic more broadly. We need your help. And I'm going to come up. I'm going to try to come up and visit you and see firsthand what you're up to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great honor and pleasure to thank Mr. Podesta for opening Capitol Hill Ocean Week 2014 and for everything that he's done in the past and everything we look forward to you doing in the future. Thank you.
Great.